Hey everybody, it's me, Jackie. I'm back again with another interview. Today we're going to talk to Camille. We're here for Alpha One COPD Connected Together by Hope. And Camille, just go ahead and share your story with us if you would, please.
Yeah, sure. My story, I think, gives a lot of credit to the Alpha One Foundation, honestly. I had been following a smattering of very mild symptoms, starting with some skin reactions that indicated autoimmune. And so, I started going to all the specialists to identify what the problem was. And I had, slightly elevated markers for autoimmune, but nothing specific. So we looked at the thyroid, and the thyroid came back with some nodules, but nothing too exciting. And what they did find in that scan, though, was emphysema on both lungs. And
And you
so,
had no symptoms? Sorry to interrupt you. So you didn't
no,
have symptoms or think that you had any symptoms of the
no.
lungs? Oh, wow.
I've been a fitness freak my whole life, and I have struggled with breathing, but I never thought anything of it. I just thought, like, do better, do
Right.
better.
I hear you. I hear you exactly. Yes.
Anyway, so I went to a pulmonologist, and they looked at my lung function and said it was fine, actually, because I had been overcompensating for so long. And so they're just extra big, but definitely bilateral fibrosis. So I talked with him, like, why could this be happening? I sure did smoke as a stupid kid, but like it's been a long time and I don't dabble in that stuff anymore. So it's surprising to be, so fitness focused and healthy and doing all the things that you're supposed to do. And then I get emphysema. And he was like, yeah, well, but you're fine. You're not sick. So I was like, so we're fine. We're just going to leave it like that. And there's no explanation. You just get to have emphysema as a fitness person. Okay. And he goes, you know
Right.
what? There is actually a blood test I could run. And so he looked at the blood levels for alpha 1 and they were 0.
Oh,
And
goodness.
so it
Wow.
was pretty clear cut at that point, but we did do the
Yes.
genetics. And I actually work present day in the pharmaceutical landscape. I work in medical affairs. So my whole purpose for living is really in understanding the drug landscape, how it is used in the field, and the clinical trial process. And so I just went straight to the Google master
Right.
and found
Right.
Alpha One Foundation immediately and literally signed up for 2 clinical trials. I made it into one, but to make it into
Yes.
that one, I had to have some liver disease. So we went through the whole gamut of tests, and my blood was fine. My initial scans were fine, but the liver biopsy showed fibrosis. So I
Mhm.
started that clinical trial. I don't know if I'm on placebo or not, but I started infusions this January, and it's it feels so much better
Good.
globally because I don't think any of us realize how much global pain there is that you just deal with. Yeah, I have
Oh,
connective
yeah.
tissue issues, like, I just have recovery issues with, working out and stuff, so I had been kind of just like everybody else assuming I'm just getting old and slowing down.
Right.
It's
Right.
not exactly that, but if I think back to, my family members, one of my most favorite people is my grandmother, and she died when I was 19, but she was 62, had all her life had bad lungs, and
Mhm.
um, there was never a reason. She wasn't a smoker. She was raised on a farm setting, so I think maybe that contributed. But she had a third of one of her lungs removed in her mid years with no explanation, and she died
Oh,
at 62 from pneumonia.
wow.
Kind of a
Yeah,
classic
yeah.
case.
Right.
Um, I never knew that, we shared so much, but I do feel, very aligned with her spiritually. So
Mm.
I guess, if this is the cost of that love, then so be
Thanks, Grandma. Yes, yeah, I understand.
uh,
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting story. I'm so glad that, your doctor knew enough to test you for alpha one because, a lot of people go years and years and, doctors don't think or know, as we find out, they don't know, to do the alpha one test. So
well, I
that's
mean, he might
good
have
to
known,
hear.
but he was about to send me out the door, and I think you still have to be
Oh,
your own advocate, you know?
right. Oh, right. So you kept pushing. That's good.
Yeah,
Right.
I sat in his office like, "Really, you're just gonna send me out with this?" I'm like, "No big deal. We're
Right.
okay." We're okay with emphysema.
Right, I'm healthy, I mean, fitness rise, yeah, I'm healthy, why do I have this emphysema? I remember that reminds me, of going for and I did the same, I smoked when I was younger and kept thinking, "Okay, I'm gonna quit, quit," and, it wasn't later till after I quit later on down the line that I found out about the alpha-1, but one of the doctors I seen for a physical said, "You have the lungs of an 80-year-old," and I even worked as a
Wow.
CNA, and of course, I look back and I had shortness of breath, and different times I always put it off at something else. I was pregnant with my youngest, and at the time when I started getting real short of breath, I thought, oh, it's from being overweight from being pregnant, or different things. But when I look back at that doctor, well, that doctor then, about he told me that, but it didn't register in my head that I should go see a pulmonologist. But why didn't he say, you should really go see a pulmonologist, or,
Right,
I don't know, just besides that, say, and then me in the back of my mind thought, okay, if I quit smoking, I'll be fine and my lungs won't be like
right,
an
right,
80-year-old, or,
right,
thinking. And then again, with my pregnancy, my OB doctor, I told her that I was short of breath and I thought maybe I might have asthma. I've kind of had problems over the years. And she just gave me an inhaler. That was
yeah.
it. And at the time, I didn't think, is this going to be harmful to my baby? Anything. I just took the inhaler because she gave it to me and, used it. And it helps a little, but not much. But it just goes to show you, like you say, we got to be our own advocates. And I've sure finally learned that over the years. It took me a while.
I know it does take a while. I'm
Yeah.
so glad I operate in healthcare. I'm sure you are too,
Yeah.
'cause you won't let it stand at some level. I
Right.
don't I watch my husband go through the process, and he's had his own issues that, you just have all this trust in these people who should know things, and it's not necessarily the case, or there may not be present enough with you to really hear you.
Right, exactly. And when you hear from the doctors too that say, "Hey, we only got a 15-minute course of
Exactly.
Alpha-1,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
all we got." I too wish if to go back on, like, their guidelines now that they give, any COPD patient, should be tested, I mean, different criteria, but if they're doing that testing, I mean, there would be, we know that we'd see more of us out there right now because we know we're
Right,
there.
exactly. Well,
So,
we didn't even think to get my husband tested as soon as we found out. I mean,
oh,
it's not even been a year, but we just had him tested, and he's MZ, and he's had
goodness.
asthma, COPD his whole life, and,
Right.
they never even thought of to test him, and he's
My
been
goodness.
has his yeah, just wild.
Sorry, I didn't mean that. And just sad too that a lot of doctors don't know that MZs can still have problems as well,
Right.
unlike like cystic fibrosis who just carry on the genes, alphas can still get sick being carriers.
Exactly. So
So,
it's been
yeah.
an eye-opening experience. Yeah, he had his own health issue 2 years ago. He had his first ocular migraine, and I we didn't know what it was, so I took him down to the hospital and had him assessed for stroke because 'cause I'm overzealous. But what they
Yeah,
found was an
right.
aortic aneurysm, and a pretty substantial one, so he had to have immediate open heart surgery.
And, that could be one of the manifestations of alpha-1 as well, yeah. So many different things out there that we learn from. Now, do you guys have kids?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, yeah.
So
Have they
one's
been
an
tested
MZ,
or
but the other one could theoretically be both, so we're doing that test now as well.
right, and I'm sorry, you said you had 0, so are you null?
I am 00. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
ZZ.
yes. Oh, you're ZZ, okay, I'm a ZZ.
Yeah.
Well,
I wish
it
I
just
was null null because then I wouldn't have
right,
a liver issue.
liver, right. That's how I found out too, I meant to say, I was in a liver study, and that's how I found out that I had any liver involvement
Yeah.
because having that because it doesn't show up in my blood work. In fact, my co-leader, I'm a sport group leader in Illinois. My ex co-leader, she had to step down because of taking care of her great grandkids, but she has cirrhosis of the liver and she's at MZ and nothing comes up in her blood work or anything. The only way they found that is through a sonogram that she was having for some other reason. And that's how
Wow.
they found that. But with you being a ZZ, both your kids at least have to be a carrier. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I shouldn't say at least, I hate
Yeah,
and I
I
hate the
know.
carrier term. I hate to use it. You hear so many others, I wish they come up with a different term, or
Yeah.
just alpha. I should just say that, they're an alpha. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
goodness.
I know. It's a wild
Well,
ride.
yeah. So when were you diagnosed exactly? Did you say
I
that?
would say,
Did I
like,
miss?
maybe around September of last year or something like that.
So fairly new, fairly new.
Yeah.
Well, I usually like to ask and end with what advice do you have for any other alpha that's recently diagnosed? It sounds like you've come a long way just in that short time that you've been diagnosed. So, I mean, you've learned a
Yeah.
lot and are learning a lot. Is there any advice that you would have for newly diagnosed alpha?
I mean, just keep asking questions. Just keep on it. Try to get into all the clinical trials. The worst they can say is no.
Right, right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
Keep
Yeah.
up on those blood panels. That's definitely, I wish Function Health would add this. Be nice.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Are you going to the conference in San Diego this summer?
I asked if I could apply for scholarships, TBD.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Well, I hope so. I would love to meet you in person, and there's nothing like, I call it a big family reunion, a lot of us do,
Yeah,
and
I
that's
went
what
to
it
the
is every year when we get together.
I went to
Did you?
the regional one last weekend, and, it was a really lovely experience.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I
It is.
definitely learned a lot. The people that I see at Columbia for the clinical trial were there presenting, and
Mhm.
I got to hear about the liver transplant that looks terrifying, but also, a full recovery. That's crazy.
Right. Yeah. It is
Yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
I never
Wow,
knew
that
that I wanted a liver transplant so bad in my life.
no kidding, no kidding. Oh, goodness. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Camille. Is there anything that you'd like to add or what, alphas or anybody else to know out there about
Well,
alphas?
I will say this. I'm a microbiologist. I have a PhD. I studied infectious disease. I ended up in the oral cavity studying the oral ecology and how our immune system responds. And interestingly, in the oral cavity, every part of our health is monitored by the neutrophil. So in alphas, neutrophil biology is key because that's what's gone aberrant or like gone wrong. And so my whole purpose in life was to solve the inflammation problem in the mouth. And so I worked at Colgate Palmolive. I did a whole bunch of academic research, won clinical awards, whatever. But I happened to
Nice.
find this niacinamide, which is actually vitamin B that actually potently corrects the neutrophil gone wrong in your mouth. And so what's happening is you have too
Interesting.
much neutrophil elastase, and it causes gingivitis and potentially downstream periodontal disease. And so I had struggled with gingivitis my whole life, and so I was super thrilled to have such a straightforward solution. And Colgate was not interested, and so I moved forward with my own brand. So I have my own oral care line, but I did come with
Yeah,
samples, and I gifted a bunch of them.
interesting.
So it's something that, I'm I just when I learned the diagnosis, I just about laughed out loud, like, "Of course. I've been
Yeah,
studying nuclear biology for so long," and
that's
anyway. So, yeah.
so interesting, and I've had problems, oral care problems, and my mother had dentures at 30. And, when I told my dentist that and I said, I don't have these back teeth,"
Yeah,
and
exactly.
when I said something to my dentist, I said, I think that he thought, like, I hate to say this, like, my mom was some druggie or something, and why my
Right.
mom lost her teeth when she was 30 and had dentures, and he kind of just, like, laughed at me, and I
Right.
thought, I just thought, and I have problems, I thought maybe it might be connected or something, but I don't know, he just really didn't take me seriously or thought, "Well, maybe she should have took better care of her teeth," and that's how I felt over the years too, because I take good care, but I
Right.
still I mean, because of reasons of not having dental insurance or what have you,
Yep.
mostly having them pulled, but thank goodness they're all in the back, but
Well, I'm happy to send you
very
some
interesting,
any alpha free toothpaste.
interesting,
It's ridiculous.
very I'd love to hear more, yes.
Yeah.
So interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Camille. It was so nice meeting you, and hopefully,
Likewise.
maybe I'll get to see you in San Diego in June.
I would love that.
Otherwise, I'm sure we'll meet again sometime.